Welcome to Texas Heart Institute podcast series on living legends and luminaries in endovascular medicine. I'm Zwanenberg Krazier. I'm an interventional cardiologist at Texas Heart Institute and Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center in Houston, Texas. Our guest and luminary today is Dr. Gustavo Oderich. Dr. Oderich joined us recently at Texas Heart and Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center in the Division of Vascular Surgery, where he currently is Chief of Vascular and Endovascular Surgery and Professor of Surgery at Baylor College of Medicine. Welcome, Gustavo, to this podcast on luminaries and living legends in endovascular medicine.
Thank you so much, Svonko. I could never dream to be put together with the list of such big leaders, in the field. So I appreciate the honor to be here today.
Thank you very much. So let's go back to the beginning. You were born and you spent your childhood in Porto Alegre in Brazil.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit, when did you start thinking about becoming a doctor?
So, we have to decide very early in Brazil because we don't have college. So we jump from high school and basically you have to sign up to the university. And I'll be frank with you, it was kind of a guesstimate. In retrospect, I think I got it right. But I was between architecture and medicine. And I identified myself a lot with friends of my parents that were physicians. So I felt the style of, of what they do, the line of work. I like to work already early on with my hands. So that's how I ended up going to medicine.
So were they in surgical fields or were they just in medicine?
Some were in the surgical field. And I enjoyed a lot listening to their, war stories, so to speak, and I always felt connected with the sense of helping people. So my family was all into business administration, and I could not imagine myself, just doing that. I'm glad I didn't, because I would probably be terrible. So
it's an interesting. There is a theme among all the participants in the series on living legends and luminaries. The great majority of physicians that we interviewed were actually stimulated to think about medicine from family members or dear friends. And so that was typically the scenario where everything began as far as their ideas in pursuing this career. Yeah. So, but when did you start thinking about surgery?
So again, then the second step, once I was in medicine, was to decide whether to go to just medicine or surgery. And it was very clear to me that I liked procedures. I liked to be involved on working with my hands, not necessarily just talking to patients over and over, but doing interventions. And that's where I was sparked my interest on vascular and endovascular procedures. It was very early on.
Very good. So what made you decide to come to the United States?
So this is now 1996, and I was then exposed to endovascular procedures because the chief of vascular surgery was just trying to do the first endovascular repairs. And I felt to myself, well, there is no way this is going to happen in Brazil, or it's going to be many years before it happens in Brazil. And in our families, Svonko, my dad, we had this thing of going out of the country for education. So my dad went to do his MBA at Harvard in the 1960s, and my mom went to do a Master's of Economics in Madrid in the 1960s. And she was like the only woman that was really doing additional education outside. So I was almost like cast aside of the family for when are you going to go somewhere, and I think one thing led to the other. I felt the training there was not sufficient to accomplish what I wanted. I also felt that the country was going to be a little late on incorporating these things. I was wrong on that. Actually, it turns out Brazil became a major place for endovascular, but that's how it started, me going to the U.S.
So I reviewed your bio and your curriculum vitae. It's quite impressive. But you had, in addition to training as far as vascular surgeon is concerned in Brazil, extensive training in this field also in the United States. Can you talk a little bit about it? Where did it start and how long did it last?
Yeah. I felt I was training forever at some point. But, one thing that was advantageous for me when I started is I knew I wanted to go to vascular surgery from the beginning. I mean, I was already actually almost going to vascular surgery in Brazil. So everything I did from the first rotation was with a purpose. And the second thing is I was very lucky to come on staff at the Mayo Clinic and be basically exposed to extreme challenging cases in a lot of volume. And training at Mayo was very important. I mean, I was really trained to be an open surgeon per se. I mean, it was, I like to say, the Navy SEAL of training for that. But then I had a chance to work with Roy Greenberg at the Cleveland Clinic, and he really sparked on me the interest for advanced endovascular. And I think also the skill set that was there, kind of not really being used, so to speak, but then it started everything, one thing after the other after I worked with Roy Greenberg.
So you temporarily left Mayo Clinic went to Cleveland Clinic to kind of sharpen your endovascular skills, and then you went back to Mayo Clinic, and I know that there you excelled and you became in charge of the training program as well, and basically pursuing career in endovascular field. And what's really amazing is that you're unique in a way because you really developed the field of treatment of thoracoabdominal aneurysms in the most complex scenarios that a lot of vascular and endovascular surgeons wouldn't even tackle. And so you had some IDE type of programs that you were working on. Can you talk a little bit about that and how did it start?
Yeah, so when I went to Cleveland, Zvonko, I was on staff at Mayo. So they had this program that was Mayo Scholar. They would send staff to spend, a period of months. It was rather short time. I was in Cleveland 3 months. But what I learned there was not only how to set up the cases, but really how Roy set up his entire practice. And he basically created a situation where he had clinical research and clinical practice together. When I came back to Mayo, I was faced with the challenge all of us have to some extent right now, which is these devices are not approved in the United States. And but we were very creative on using, modifications of stents to accomplish the first several cases. And then we attracted the interest of industry. And, we were involved in clinical trials, device trials. I would say almost every device trial on this area since 2008 or 9. And it was in 2013, Zvonko, that I was able to get a physician-sponsored investigational device exemption, IDE. And that opened the door because we had no limitation of design of stents anymore. We would basically be able to get access to anything that Cook Medical could make. And even some things that are not going to come on trial that we had access. And that really set the stage for success of the program.
Yeah, you worked and you still work very closely with Cook Medical. It sounds, and it's also my experience, that they are probably the most flexible company in this field in giving physicians the opportunity to treat all kind of scenarios where the other devices wouldn't work. So that's fortunate in a way. But you also had tremendous experience in using all the other devices, as you mentioned, and participated in clinical trial. And this field has expanded tremendously. Of course, there are still significant unmet needs, and there are still devices that are available abroad in Europe in early stages of either trials or clinical use that we do not have here. So what do you think, what does the future look like as far as this particular field? I'm talking about thoracoabdominal, complex aneurysms with branched, fenestrated endografts, and so on. There's a lot of excitement in it, but what can we expect in the near future?
So I think that, Zvonko, I'll back a little bit on your question about the issue of the companies. I think it's very important for the younger audience also that you shouldn't be involved only with one company. I think you developing ties with the engineers of companies is very important for those that are interested in this area. And I had a lot of work with Cook and particularly W.O. Gore. And one of the good things, now answering your question, is that all the companies are interested. So, this was really a one-company game 20 years ago, but nowadays is almost every company has a complex program. And what they are realizing is that the success and the spectrum of this program is what makes them have the physicians, because the physicians want a solution for all their patients. And if you might have a great stent for infrarenal disease, but if you can't address the patient that has no neck or above the renals or arch, you end up having to rely on other stents. And in particular, I would say Gore is an example of how much they changed their game in the last 15 years by addressing every area of the aorta. And of course, Cook is also very special because they still invest on the custom solution, which is really very important and is laborious for the companies, maybe not even financially attractive for some of the companies, but they still do it, and that's very valuable.
So I know about your expertise for many years and referred several patients of mine to you because they couldn't be treated with any technologies or even physician-modified endografts due to complexity of their disease. And I thank you for being able to take care of those patients that were otherwise desperate. But what I wanted to ask you is, of course, you mentioned that the aortic arch and even more ascending aorta are true challenges now for most of the devices, most of the companies to resolve those issues. So there are significant limitations that we have to face in those type of scenarios. So do you foresee in the next 4 or 5 years this is going to be addressed and resolved in a favorable way?
I think so. I am very enthusiastic about the concept of endobental. I haven't done that myself, but actually this is a next step. Hopefully we'll do it here together. And of course, it's going to be done with some limited extent for starters, but take, for example, acute dissections on high-risk patients. If there is a solution that we can tackle, the dissection and the valve, that might allow us to treat a substantial number of patients. It's a long shot to have that as an alternative for low-risk, intermediate-risk patients, but I think that, Zvonko, there is even already some nice work being done, in Paris by Stéphane Hollon and at the University of Maryland. The group is doing outstanding work with endobental, so it's coming.
Very good. This is really exciting, and I'm looking forward to future development in this field. Now, we didn't mention anything, and I want you personally to mention, I know you have done thousands of thoracoabdominal stent grafts and surgical procedures. Can you mention a little bit about the numbers, your experience, and your technical success in those type of scenarios? I know that you have excellent results, but I'm sure our audience wants to hear it directly from you.
Well, so I was just putting that together recently, and we're close to, I would say, 900 for thoracoabdominal, fenestrated and branched. A lot of those are done under the IDE. We were able to keep a mortality of 1% for the IDE, and that I was concerned when I left Mayo whether that could be reproduced, but we were able to maintain that. When we look at all the patients, and there is a lot of patients that are extreme high risk, the mortality is a little higher, but it's still is far less than what it is the average for open surgery. I mean, open surgery for this, we're talking 10-15%, and mortality is down to 1 to 1.5%. So that is, of course, the price to pay with endovascular is aside of the cost itself, which is a matter for a whole new interview, I think, for us to talk about the cost. But it's the secondary interventions, that these patients, we need to maintain. These stents are very complicated stents, and you end up needing to do reinterventions at least in 1 out of 3 patients, I think.
This is absolutely impressive. And we're so glad to have you here. With the statistics that you have, this is way above in quality than we have seen anywhere else. And we are fortunate in a way because you're joining us at Baylor College of Medicine, Texas Heart, and St. Luke's Baylor Medical Center with luminaries like Joe Cosali that has tremendous experience. I think he has done over 3,800 of open aortic aneurysm repairs and a significant number also with stent grafts. So now we have 2 great luminaries that definitely are achieving tremendous goals. So I'm greatly appreciative for that. But I'm going to ask you one very provocative question, and you don't have to answer it, or you can put it in a politically correct way. But you come from us from 2 blocks away. From another institution. So I'm not going to mention the institution unless you want to, but just tell us, why did you come to us? I mean, you already were well recognized. You had everything what you wanted to do. So
that's a very good question. I mean, and I'll tell you, I think it was meant to be. When I was approached to come to Baylor and Texas Heart, the first thing that came on my mind is I really don't want to go through another moving or change. But as I explore the history, the legacy, the people that are here, and the prospect of where the program could go, I felt was worth the pain of going backwards a few steps to rebuild it. And I'm actually very excited, Zvonko. I think I made the right decision just looking at the culture of everybody and where we can achieve. I don't take it easy to change, because I'll tell you, it's painful to have to rebuild operating rooms and retrain the team. But the leadership here convinced me, and I'm convinced every day that I made the right decision to come.
Oh, thank you very much. That was a perfect answer to a very tough question. So one thing that's absolutely amazing, I don't know the answer to it, or maybe you can find the answer, but there is not a single program in the United States or in the world in vascular or endovascular field where you're not present physically giving talks and presentations. I don't know how you do that, but because you organize some of the meetings or you're a co-program director, you probably don't sleep at all unless you sleep on the plane while you're traveling from destination to destination. So tell me the secret.
Well, I have to learn how to say no, which is a problem, because you're right. I try to keep to at least 1 meeting a month and not more than that, because the absence from the clinical practice is really tough to keep the wheels moving. I would say Zoom has helped greatly. Zvonko, we can be almost everywhere nowadays. I have great help of my team, to get the research done, the slides, everything, so that helped. And Houston, Houston is such a hub, you can go everywhere directly. When I was at Mayo, it was tough. I had to leave a day before, I would get a day later, and here access to everywhere is so much easier.
Thank you. And finally, I just wanted to mention that we have a tradition here at Texas Heart and our institutions to work very closely with our cardiothoracic surgeons and our vascular surgeons. This goes back decades, where we had a unified training approach for our fellows, for our residents, and a lot of surgical residents through decades rotated with me and with some other interventional cardiologists to learn some of the techniques and skills that were not available at that time in vascular surgery or cardiothoracic surgery. Of course, the situation has changed as far as vascular surgery is concerned because the great majority of procedures now in a lot of centers are done via endovascular approach because techniques and technology is there. But I certainly hope that we will continue to communicate and work together in this field.
Oh, absolutely, Zvonko. I'll tell you, it's very important. Actually, that's another point I want to come across for the younger crowd, that you collaborate and learn from cardiology, interventional radiology, cardiac surgery, vascular surgery, new approaches. A lot of the things I picked up over the years are from colleagues in other disciplines. And the other thing is no one disciplines know it all. So as a center here, we are in the top of the pyramid. We take care of the sickest patients, and we need to be able to reach out to the other specialty and come up with the best approach.
Very good. Well, I welcome you and thank you very much for this participation in the podcast. You are now one of the luminaries and living legends in our field of endovascular medicine. Thank you.
Thank you, Zvonko. Thank you. I'm honored.